Alright, welcome back friends. We've already sketched out the scene, just a loose outline of our camellias, and now I'm pre-wetting the paper with clean water. This is one of my favorite parts because it feels so meditative. As I do this, I want to remind you that there is no rush. Take your time and let the water flow across your paper. If you are feeling a little unsure about how your sketch looks right now, that's okay. It will all come together as we add colors. When we are painting wet on wet, I want you to use enough water to make the surface glisten, like a soft sheen, but try to avoid creating puddles. If there is too much water, the pigments can merge and spread uncontrollably. Of course, happy accidents can happen, but for this piece we want a bit more control over where our colors need to flow. As for the paint consistency, we want to load our brush with an activated color that resembles the consistency of milk, and gently apply it to the areas where we want it to flow and mingle with the neighboring colors. Judging how much paint to load and supply to the wet paper can be tricky. It's one of the toughest skills to master in watercolor. Honestly, I struggled with it for years. It takes time, patience, and a lot of trial and error. But here's the good part. Every time you play with this process, you get a little closer to understanding and harnessing the beautiful, unpredictable nature of watercolors. You just saw me mix Alizarin crimson with a touch of ultramarine and opera pink to create a beautiful reddish purple for the shadowed areas of the flowers. For the leaves, I reach for Winsor blue and new Gamboge to create a vibrant green. Since our paper is still glistening, we can keep applying colors and let them softly blend on the surface. Here is one important tip. Make sure the paint on your brush has a slightly higher pigment-to-water ratio than the dampness of the paper. This way you'll have more control and the paint won't spread uncontrollably. It's a small adjustment, but it makes a big difference in how your colors behave. And now we are adding a touch of yellow to the mix to create soft brown for suggesting the branches of the camellia tree. The subtle additions help ground the composition and give us the sense that this is a living, thriving plant. Remember to apply just a light touch here and there while we're still working wet on wet. I hope that the brown color can help complement the flowers without overpowering them. And here I've decided to spatter a bit of yellow across the piece before we leave the sketch to dry completely. It adds a playful touch and a bit of energy to the composition. Alright, let's move on and start applying the second wash and adding details to our sketch. It's been 2 days since I laid down the first wash, and now I feel ready to take the next step, for better or for worse. Let's start by pre-wetting the areas where we want to apply shadows and background colors. You can use any brush that holds a good amount of water. Now let's have fun with this one. Load your brush with pigment and instead of painting, try squeezing it gently to create large droplets of color. Then move it around by gently tilting your paper. Go ahead and try it. It's such a joyful act of spontaneity, and I hope you try this at home too. Please don't worry about being precise or accurate here. We are just playing right now. just saw, I've mixed the darkest dark using Alizarin Crimson and French Ultramarine and squeezed it onto the background area to create depth and contrast. And in the moment of spontaneity, I reached for my quill feather and started spreading the paint with its feathered side, creating these beautiful abstract shapes. It's such a fun way to let the paint flow freely. In just a bit, I'll use the quill tip to suggest the ruffled petals on the camellia flowers, adding a touch of texture and detail. And before we move on to the final details, I want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this loose, intuitive approach to sketching. It's such a freeing way to create. Some of you have mentioned wanting to see how sketches like this lead to larger, more finished pieces, and I'm definitely considering that for future videos. Maybe we can even create a new playlist and call it something like Sketch to Painting, or whatever name you think fits best. Please share your ideas in the comments. I'd love to hear your suggestions for naming this playlist, where we'll explore both loose sketches and the final transformations. Before we wrap up today, I want to take a moment to reflect on something that I think many of us struggle with: moving past that first wash. It's hard, isn't it? That first layer can feel so fresh and full of possibility, and the fear of ruining it can sometimes stop us in our tracks. I've been there so many times, staring at a piece for days, unsure whether to take the next step. It's a vulnerable place to be, but it's also where growth happens. If you ever felt this way, please know you're not alone. It's okay to hesitate, to feel unsure, and even to make mistakes along the way. What matters is that you keep going, trusting yourself and your creativity. I feel like sometimes the most beautiful results come from those moments when we push past our doubts and just let the flow unfold. Remember, this is your art, your story, and it's worth celebrating every step of the way. Thank you for being here with me today, my friends. I hope this inspires you to keep exploring and trusting your own creative instincts. Until next time, keep painting, and please take care of yourselves and your loved ones.